Welcome to Scriptural Science, a presentation of Truth and Life Institute, Boston, Massachusetts, and Oba, Nigeria. The following is a subsection of the book, Everyone is a Protestant, written and published by Ifeanyi Chukwujima, scriptural scientist and a servant of God. This subsection's ID is Everyone is a Protestant, Book 15:5. The church is to the world what the Levites were to the Israelites. And the church leaders are to the world what the descendants of Aaron were to Israel. The church is nothing new to the earth. The church has been around since Adam and Eve at the Garden of Eden, Genesis 2:8-9, 15:22 NIV. God reinstituted church in Abraham, later commanding Moses not to assign the Levites to any portion of the land which the Israelites inherited from the Lord that was promised to their forefathers, because the Levites are God's inheritance among the people of Israel. In the same way, the church is God's people set aside from the world, John 15 verse 19, Genesis 6 verses 5-13, Genesis 12 verses 1-5, to help the world break away from sin and come to safety in God. The church is the congregation of all believers who have given their hearts to Christ and belong together, Ephesians 2:21-22, and not religious establishments. Religious establishments were designed by God to expressly serve the people that constitute the church. Legislating the lives of believers and policing their actions was the very reason why Jesus Christ rebuked the Jewish religious establishments in the woes. Christian religious establishments were expressly charged by Jesus Christ, Matthew 28 verses 18-20, to teach the peoples of all nations everything which Jesus had taught his apostles, which the apostles passed on to the Gentile church leaders. In Christ's rule of love, Galatians 3 verses 1-29 NV, every believer is tasked with closely watching their own actions to keep themselves in line with the teachings of Jesus Christ, speaking honestly to others, building others up and keeping hurts away from others. Let no debt remain outstanding, except the continuing debt to love one another, for whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. 9. The commandments: you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and whatever other command there may be, are summed up in this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. 10. Love does no harm to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law, Romans 13 verses 8-10 NIV. This is the reason why Jesus Christ never confronted Judas Iscariot about stealing money from Christ's ministry. He allowed Judas's own wickedness to decide Judas's fate, making himself the prophesied apostle who betrayed Jesus and sold him to the Jewish authorities, John 13 verses 18-29 NIV. Jesus concentrated all his efforts, time, and energy on teaching all 12 apostles everything he had himself learned from God the Father, John 7 verses 16-17, etc. The Gentile church was commanded by Christ to follow Christ's examples, but continues to fail to do so, and so we know and rely on the love God has for us. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in them. 17. This is how love is made complete among us, so that we will have confidence on the day of judgment. In this world we are like Jesus. 18. There is no fear in love. But perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love, 1 John 4 verses 16-18 NIV. Those who lead the churches are to the peoples of all nations, what the priestly descendants of Aaron were to the people of Israel. Like the descendants of Aaron, church leaders everywhere are priests of God to all the people of all nations. The way the Levites were distributed throughout Israel to administer to all of Israel's spiritual needs, which helped the people with everything in their lives, is the same way the church must be set up among all the peoples of all nations, to help the peoples of all nations manage their daily lives wherever they reside on the face of the earth. Everything God had commanded about the Levites with respect to the people of Israel applies to the church with respect to the peoples of all nations if it is in relation to endearing themselves to God's heart as priests and temple. Servants throughout Israel, it is the same way for the leaders of the church to minister to the people of the world. In their zeal for God, the Levites, with swords, destroyed their brothers and friends who had walked away from God and were worshiping idols. Moses saw that the people were running wild and that Aaron had let them get out of control and so become a laughingstock to their enemies. 26 So he stood at the entrance to the camp and said, "Whoever is for the Lord, come to me." And all the Levites rallied to him. 27 Then he said to them, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says, each man strap a sword to his side. Go back and forth through the camp from one end to the other, each killing his brother and friend and neighbor." 28 The Levites did as Moses commanded, and that day about 3,000 of the people died. 29 Then Moses said, "You have been set apart to the Lord today, for you were against your own sons and brothers, and he has blessed you this day." Exodus 32, verse 25. 29. With regard to the world, on the other hand, the church leaders are chosen by Jesus Christ to bring their idol-worshiping brothers and friends to repentance, not with swords, but through Christ's gospel of peace and mercy. Put your sword back in its place. Jesus said to him, "For all who draw the sword will die by the sword." 53 Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? 54 But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen in this way? Matthew 26, verses 52 to 54 NIV. It should be observed that the Levites did as Moses commanded them, Exodus 32, verses 25 to 29, but the church and the church leaders failed to do as Jesus Christ commanded them, Matthew 26, verses 52 to 53. The church leaders wielded swords against one another and other people who they saw as threats to their temporal rule over the people of the lands they were serving. Sweeping these misdeeds under the rug as if they were right has been the fuel that continues to drive the fire of Protestantism across the Church of Jesus Christ on the earth. If it is in relation to God's protection of the Levites against those who pursue them for nothing, Deuteronomy 33, verses 8 to 11, it is also the same way for the church and its leaders in the modern world. Matthew 16, verses 17 to 19, Matthew 28, verses 18 to 20. However, it is only through continuous obedience to the commands of God and His Christ that the church leaders would experience the lead of the Spirit of God and the eternal protection which Jesus Christ had promised them. When the Gentile church leaders started following the misconception of their own minds, they walked away from God's wisdom and protection, opening themselves to ruthless bombardments on all sides by the rising European powers and others. It should be observed that the Levites remained loyal in their consecration as servants of God's people, but the church leaders became faithless and walked away from Jesus Christ's command to them to serve the people of all the nations of the world in humility and mercy. And instead of serving the church, Matthew 20, verses 25 to 28, they made themselves the church and made the people that constitute the church their servants. If it is in relation to the Levites' possessions, so it is also with the possessions of the church, as demonstrated by the apostles in the book of Acts. Numbers 35:1-15 NEV On the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho, the Lord said to Moses, to command the Israelites to give the Levites towns to live in from the inheritance the Israelites will possess, and give them pasture lands around the towns. 3 Then they will have towns to live in and pasture lands for the cattle they own and all their other animals. For the pasture lands around the towns that you give the Levites will extend 1,000 cubits from the town wall. 5 Outside the town, measure 2,000 cubits on the east side, 2,000 on the south side, 2,000 on the west, and 2,000 on the north, with the town in the center. They will have this area as pasture land for the towns. 6 of the towns you give the Levites will be cities of refuge, to which a person who has killed someone may flee. In addition, give them 42 other towns. 7 in all you must give the Levites 48 towns, together with their pasture lands. 8 The towns you give the Levites from the land the Israelites possess are to be given in proportion to the inheritance of each tribe. Take many towns from a tribe that has many, but few from one that has few. 9 Then the Lord said to Moses, 10 Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you cross the Jordan into Canaan, 11 Select some towns to be your cities of refuge, to which a person who has killed someone accidentally may flee. 12, they will be places of refuge from the avenger, so that anyone accused of murder may not die before. They stand trial before the assembly. 13, these 6 towns you give will be your cities of refuge. 14, give 3 on this side of the Jordan and 3 in Canaan as cities of refuge. 15, these 6 towns will be a place of refuge for Israelites and for foreigners residing among them, so that anyone who has killed another accidentally can flee there. Deuteronomy 18 verses 1 to 8 NIV. The Levitical priests, indeed, the whole tribe of Levi, are to have no allotment or inheritance with Israel. They shall live on the food offerings presented to the Lord, for that is their inheritance. 2, they shall have no inheritance among their fellow Israelites. The Lord is their inheritance, as he promised them. 3, this is the share due the priests from the people who sacrifice a bull or a sheep. The shoulder, the internal organs, and the meat from the head point for you are to give them the first fruits of your grain, new wine, and olive oil. And the first wool from the shearing of your sheep. 5, for the Lord your God has chosen them and their descendants out of all your tribes to stand and minister in the Lord's name always. 6, if a Levite moves from one of your towns anywhere in Israel where he is living and comes in all earnestness to the place the Lord will choose. 7, he may minister in the name of the Lord his God, like all his fellow Levites who serve there in the presence of the Lord. 8, he is to share equally in their benefits, even though he has received money from the sale of family possessions. Joshua 13 verse 14 NIV. But to the tribe of Levi he gave no inheritance, since the food offerings presented to the Lord, the God of Israel, are their inheritance, as he promised them. Joshua 18 verses 3 to 7 NIV. So Joshua said to the Israelites, how long will you wait before you begin to take possession of the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has given you? For appoint 3 men from each tribe. I will send them out to make a survey of the land and to write a description of it, according to the inheritance of each. Then they will return to me. Point 5, you are to divide the land into 7 parts. Judah is to remain in its territory on the south, and the tribes of Joseph in their territory on the north. 6, after you have written descriptions of the 7 parts of the land, bring them here to me, and I will cast lots for you in the presence of the Lord our God. 7, the Levites, however, do not get a portion among you, because the priestly service of the Lord is their inheritance. And Gad, Reuben, and the half-tribe of Manasseh have already received their inheritance on the east side of the Jordan. Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave it to them. Leviticus 25 verses 32 to 34 NV. The Levites always have the right to redeem their houses in the Levitical towns, which they possess. 33, so the property of the Levites is redeemable, that is, a house sold in any town they hold, and is to be returned in the Jubilee, because the houses in the towns of the Levites are their property among the Israelites. 34, but the pasture land belonging to their towns must not be sold. It is their permanent possession. But the Gentile church leaders invented their own rules and continued through the centuries to struggle with holding things together. Not only did their grip on temporal control of the world slipped, their grip on the spiritual leadership of the peoples of the nations of the world also slipped. Instead of guiding the peoples of the various nations that constituted the church to allot lands to the church as commanded the Israelites about the Levites, the church leaders made Europe its haven, took total control of the lands around them, and starved the rest of the world of Christ and the mercy of God, even giving its blessings to European nations to forcefully confiscate other people's lands and brutalize them until they adopt the Christian religion. Where did all that come from? Except from the misdirection of the minds of the politically minded Gentile church leaders who installed themselves as majestic temporal rulers over all peoples and diplomats in the affairs of nations. Instead of humbly remaining teachers and spiritual ambassadors to the peoples of all nations as commanded by Jesus Christ, who himself washed the feet of all his apostles in keeping with his mission of selfless giving and tireless service to all peoples, when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. 13, you call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. 14 Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. 15 I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. 16 Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. 17 Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. John 13 verses 12 to 17 NIV.